Can you guys hear me now? Let me know if you can hear me. I think this should fix it. Okay. Tell me if it's too loud. I can. It doesn't look like it's too loud. Maybe it's popping a little bit too much. All right. The last time this happened, I didn't know what was wrong. And I ended up, because there's no way to change the microphone from inside the interface, which you would think that they should have that. Um, so it just dawned on me now that if it's already chosen that mic, I might as well switch to this mic. So anyway, we've got two questions to start with already. Um, Sean asks, "Have I ever used heavyweight mouthpieces?" And the answer for that is, I've tried them. I've never used them. Um, one of my very first articles, I always say very first articles because I think a lot of my other articles were junk. Okay. But, they call us in today's world content creators. I don't like that term, but here's the thing. Everybody's got great ideas at the beginning. But to keep doing it over and over and over again, now you start coming up with nonsense. And I think sometimes that's what happened with my newsletter in the 90s. I think I came up with a lot of nonsense just so that I could publish on that day. So when I refer to one of my first, I'm talking about before I ran out of ideas. Right? So anyway, um, that's why I like this format, by the way, because I'm answering your questions, so I don't have to come up with content. I like this format. So anyway, one of my first articles I wrote about the hierarchy of the impact that the equipment has. The and the highest impact we can get from our equipment is what I called in that article the internal dimensions. So we're talking about mouthpieces, we're talking about horns. The internal dimensions of the mouthpiece are what makes the mouthpiece play the way it does. If you get a deeper mouthpiece, you've now changed the internal dimensions. If you get a wider or or s- not wider is the wrong. Maybe it is wide. Anyway, if you get a big diameter as opposed to a small diameter, you're changing those internal dimensions. If you change the backbore, you're changing the internal dimensions. If you're looking at trumpets and you change the 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 flare of the lead pipe, you're changing the internal dimensions. Stuff like that. If you change the bore, you're changing the internal dimensions. You change the bell, you're changing the internal dimensions. Those are the things that make the biggest difference. When you get into the external dimensions, like the weight of the metal. Now, see, when I in the 80s, everybody wanted lighter, 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 lighter. Okay, people were taking pieces off of their trumpets to make them lighter. Then in the 90s, we switched to heavier, 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 heavier. Um, I have experimented with all of that. I'm not so concerned. Let me tell you what my perception. Let's use that word. My perception of what happens when you change the weight of the instrument. Now, in order to understand this, you need to know that there are two resonances. We talk about resonance um, in the context of the internal dimensions before. But there's another resonance, and that resonance is the resonance of the metal itself. Those are two different resonances. And the idea behind the weighted equipment, whether it doesn't matter, it's all the same. The scientific idea behind it, by the way, it is scientific. The scientific idea behind weighted mouthpieces, weighted valve caps, weighted everything, even the weight of the bell itself, it's all the same. The idea is to bring the resonance of the metal, not the internal resonance that we normally talk about, the resonance of the metal lower in pitch. And the reason why they do this is because the theory is, I've not experienced it myself. The theory is that if the metal vibrates at a different frequency from the air column inside the horn, it can cause problems on some of the notes. So you could be playing and have problems on some of the notes by playing on. One of the easiest ways to do this is to buy a weighted mouthpiece, and that brings the resonant frequency of your trumpet. See, once you stick that mouthpiece in there and get a seal, the weight of the trumpet gets heavier. All right, bringing that resonant frequency down. And just like what we have with the resonant frequency inside the air column, the lower the fundamental is, the closer the overtones become in that register. So by bringing those closer overtones down into the playable range of the instrument, you remove the bad notes that might be caused. Now, this is theory, right? I myself have not. Maybe the Bach people know about this and design it so you don't have this problem. Who knows? What I'm sharing with you is the theory. Okay. By bringing that pitch down, you remove the bad notes that conflict between the metal, the resonance of the metal and the resonance of the air column. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So they're supposed to work. I've tried them before. I've never really been interested. What interests me is the theory, right? I, I, I think it's a great idea to pursue some of this stuff for me as a teacher. That way, when my students come in with a weighted mouthpiece, I don't automatically tell them, oh, so there are a lot of things in the trumpet community that are just gimmicks. There are a lot of those things. For example, this is the best example, right? I remember in the 80s, let me write on here. Oh, I have my share thing. Let me do my share thing. I'll open up the software real quick. Oh, wrong button. Um, Open up my drawing software. Share screen. Oh, it's blank. Why is it blank? Come on, come on. Oh, Chrome tab. That's why it's blank. I don't have any Chrome tabs open. Okay, here we go. We're almost there. Let me move this. Okay. Let me start a new image. Okay. Now, you guys know that there's waves inside the tubing. Let's say that's a piece of your tubing in your trumpet. And every time you play a note, there are nodes to that note. So let's say hypothetically we're playing a note where there's a node there and a node there. And there used to be a plastic product that you would insert into your trumpet to the node. Now, which node? Well, see, that's part of the problem, isn't it? When you when you play and change notes, those nodes move. let's let's not bother ourselves with details. Okay. Um there was a product a plastic product that would get inserted. It had two ends, plastic ends, and then in the middle was twisted, sort of like this. And the salesman would tell you that it makes you crack less notes and play better in tune and stuff like that. All the things that I tell you can't be done, right? All the things I tell you can't be done with your conscious mind. They're telling you all you have to do is buy this piece of plastic, insert it into the node, and so their idea is that this node, you guys have seen sine waves before. This node is inserted this plastic is inserted at the node, and it shapes that node so that you get a better sound and all that other stuff, right? Um, I don't know what this product was called. You know me. I don't badmouth people or their products or anything like that. Here's the problem. Even so, ignoring the fact that the node moves when you change notes, ignoring that fact, what's wrong with this picture? Can any of you guys tell me what's wrong with this? Keeping in mind this is a trumpet. Now this is can any of you guys tell me what's wrong with that picture? What's wrong with this? Even this picture that I've drawn for you, what's wrong with it? Oh, look, my It's not the same. Anyway, what's wrong with this picture? Can any of you tell me? I would like to know. I would be delighted if one of you guys said, this is what's wrong, and got it right. I'll give you 10 seconds. So Mr. Lampy says constantly changes. Um, so what I'm asking is, um, so that's correct. That's the first thing that's wrong. I'm talking about what's wrong with the image that's on the screen now. Sean says you stick something in the horn and it hinders the airflow. That's another uh, good answer, but not what I'm looking for. Let's try one more, see who else might come up with something. Okay, here we go. Let me go back there again. What you see here, first of all, the trumpet isn't sine wave, right? Trumpet is not sine wave. But even if it was, so there's a second thing wrong with it. Trumpet is not sine wave. The nodes, so the wave inside the tubing is an impact wave, not a sine wave. You know, when you pluck that string and look at it and it's vibrating, and if you look really closely, that's that string is vibrating on a sine wave. If it's plucked, it has a different wave if it's bowed. The flute also creates a sine wave. Trumpet does not. And the nature of the wave, let's say this is the node. The nature of the wave is that there's more air compressed here than there is here. So if we wanted to truly represent it, it doesn't look like this at the node. It looks more like, now this is at least a closer representation of what that node looks like. If you could see it, if you could see the molecules and how they were bumping up against each other, this is what it would look like. More dense here, less dense here. It's an impact wave. The air inside the the tube is pushing up against other air, and it gets squished together more densely at I don't know which one's the node, the dense part or the not dense part. I think it's the other way around. I think I got it backwards. It's the not dense part that is the node, and this would be the middle of the wave or whatever. But the point is, um, that that piece of equipment that people were putting in their bells was based on a false visual representation of what was going on inside the horn. So yes, there are things that are uh, huge scams, huge um, gimmicks, but I don't think the weighted stuff is. There is actually a theoretical purpose for it, I just never found myself needing it. Now, Sean asks, are the tendency tones you give supposed to be memorized along with the tune associated with them? Um, yes, in the past I didn't require it because nobody would do it. I'm at a place today in my teaching where, and it's not that I require it, but the where I'm at in my teaching is like, if you know what the benefits are, it's your choice. How good do you want to be? Does that make sense? And so, memorizing the tendency tones along with the song, the tune that you're trying to learn. Now, do I make everybody do that? No, I don't do that. I don't make anybody do anything. That's the big thing between the difference between my teaching today and my old teaching. Um, I'm not here to motivate you. If you need someone to motivate you, you need a different teacher. I'm not here to motivate you. I believe this is my pedagogical foundational belief. I believe that if you know one way to do something and the other way to do something, and one gives you better results, it makes sense to me that you would want to do the one that gives you the better results. Right? And if that's the case, then why do I need to motivate you? So, no, I'm not here to motivate you. I'm here to educate you, and you do with it what you want. But yes, it's better if you memorize them. Okay, looking here. Um, Hello. By the way, hello everybody. Because of the glitch at the beginning, I haven't had time to say hello. Um, Blifford Clown. That's a clever name. R asks, are you writing the etudes for TJEA this year? I write every year and I have submitted 3 etudes. What they do with them is up to them. I don't expect them to choose my etudes. That's not how that works. I don't know who else has submitted etudes. I don't know who the judges are and what they like and what they don't like. Um, so I can't know if they've chosen my etudes or not. I don't find out until about a week before they're published. A week or two before they're published. I would like for them to choose my etudes. I always like that. But it's not something I'm emotionally invested in. All right, let's see what we've got here. Um, Mr. Derek says if the nodes don't match the notes, it's going to be a big problem. That's right. So that's the first problem. That's the first problem. All right. So EDU says, hello, Eddie. I hope you are doing well. I am. Thank you. I'm playing a jazz trio gig every Thursday in a restaurant. The gig is 3 hours long. People are talking very loudly, and needless to say, my endurance suffers. A big deal. Any tips? I do play the head and let the pianist take the first solo. Then I play my solo, and then I let the bassist take a solo before I play the head again. Um, I think I told you guys what happened to me recently, where I had a brass quartet gig, in a room where all the walls were glass, right? And it was all women. Um, and it was loud, 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 loud. And I had the first hardcore um, endurance issues I've had in many, many years, coming from being sick and all that stuff. So, what I've started doing is just practicing louder at home. Now, I do have that free download on the website. I think it's free. If it's not free, it's not much. I think it's free though. The it's the um let me open it up and send you guys a link. The Spider Dynamic Long Tones. Ooh, what happened to my website? The the add to cart button is a different color and I didn't do that. That's bizarre. Okay, here's the link. And I suggest overall practicing louder at home, but also um, do this exercise, this spider long tone exercise that I just put. Let me double check that it's free. No, it's not free. Sorry, I misspoke. It's nine. Oh, because it's a whole book. It's like an ebook. It's got a lot of different exercises in it. Um, they're all spider dynamic long tones, but they're for different levels of player. You don't have to go past G for that. I think it's G. Um, yeah, it's not about how high you can go. It's about how loud you play. When you do the exercise, make sure that the top volume on each note is as loud as you can play. Okay? Otherwise, the exercise won't work. The the loud part has to be as loud as you can play. The soft part has to be as soft as you can play. To the extreme. I hope that helps. But the biggest answer is that you should be practicing louder at home. And for that said, I'm not a big fan of practicing with mutes. I think if you have to practice with a mute, I don't know. It's try to find a way. Now, look, when I practice with a mute, which I used to practice with a mute when I lived in the apartment, only when I knew there were other people in the building. I would look outside into the parking lot, see who was there, and if everybody was gone, I would practice for as much as I wanted to. And then if I was going to practice in the evening, I would put my mute in and put earplugs, and I don't mean just any earplugs. They have to be the rubber type that seals the the flow. The ones that I used were marketed as swimming earplugs, like to keep the water out of your ears. I would buy swimming earplugs, moisten them with my tongue, and stick them in. Put the mute in, and it sounds a little kind of weird, but you can really honk it, and nobody would ever know. And you get to hear yourself very clearly. Oh, sorry. All right. Hello, Seppo. Nice to see you. Larry says, in your quick warm up for trumpet, number five long tones, your instruction states bend the second note. Can you explain or demonstrate? Yes, well, bending is when you lip it down a half step. Okay. I don't remember what note that is, but we're going to keep the same thing ring, but go down a half step. So that's how that works. I hope that was what you were looking for. All right. EDU says, thank you, Eddie. That makes sense. I like to practice at soft volumes at home most of the time. So do I. Even more so since I got sick. But I think that the sound of the trumpet from somebody that can play loud, playing soft, is just gorgeous. I like that sound. I like that sound. And I prefer that sound. But if I'm going to be a viable trumpet player, I can't afford to let myself have that kind of crash and burn endurance issue again. It wasn't that bad. I shouldn't say crash and burn, but it was bad. I've always been known as the guy with all the chops. Loud, soft, it didn't matter. The difference now is I don't have enough loud gigs to keep my loud chops up. And the way endurance works with the loud stuff is the more you push the air to play loud, the more your face has to hold those muscles in place. And yes, you're going to get tired doing that. The louder you play, the more these muscles, I'm talking about the whole face, right? Otherwise, you puff your cheeks. So the louder you play, the the more your muscles have to work to hold it all in. So if you have a loud gig and you don't practice loud, then it's not reasonable to expect. Now, don't get me wrong. I have, over the last few years, said that endurance is influenced by efficiency. So if you are a more efficient player, then it doesn't tax your endurance nearly as much. All right. But your efficiency at one volume is different from your efficiency at another volume. I hope that makes sense. So I'm I never lost my endurance. With all that sickness and the anemia and all the stuff I've been through over the last few years, I never lost my endurance. But once it gets loud, that endurance was gone like that because it's more muscular. Playing at a softer volume is not as muscular as. Now, don't get me wrong, I do believe that you can achieve efficiency at the louder volumes. But for some reason, I lost that. Sean says I'm practicing the hotel in the hotel with a mute. I tried without it, but I felt I was too loud, even trying to play softly. Um, yeah, each one of us has to find a different way to make that work. I do think that if you're going to be practicing in the hotel with almost all your time being muted, you should spend time before and after each practice session playing something without the mute very, very softly. Because the mute can, there is a potential practicing with the mute to ruin your playing forever. And I know that there are people who try to sell you mutes where they promise that won't happen. I'm sorry. First of all, it doesn't happen to everybody. And if it's like statistical, how do you know which, there's no way to prove that one mute damages people less than another. There's no way to prove that. Now, I do think that wearing those water earplugs, the swimming earplugs, can alleviate a lot of that damage. Mr. Derek says, question for whenever, what role, if any, does the aperture size play in playing? Range, tone quality, and making notes in general. Is it a fallout of playing but still matters? Or does it? Or doesn't matter? Okay, so when we start talking about internal stuff, it becomes entirely theoretical. That doesn't mean we don't have theories, but when we start talking about the internal stuff, like even the people talk about the throat, your throat is too tense, and or any of that stuff, it's theoretical. Don't get me wrong; those theories matter, okay, but it's theoretical. Now, what do we know about the theory of the aperture size? We know that smaller apertures are used to play higher, bigger apertures are used to play lower, smaller apertures are used to play softer, bigger apertures are used to play louder. Now, when I first learned about that parallel thing, it was mind boggling because now it makes sense, right? If you play higher, it's easier to play soft, right? The aperture closes and you end up with a very soft note. This is, we call it squealing or screeching or whatever, that's a thing. It's a natural phenomenon. Playing higher, it's easier to play softer. Playing lower, it's easier to play loud. Playing loud softly, playing low softly is a contradiction. Playing high loudly is also a contradiction. Now, how do we explain that contradiction? I don't have an explanation for it. We know both is true, but if both were absolutely true, then you couldn't play high and loud. If it was absolutely true, then you couldn't play low and soft. But we know from the music that we listen to that both are absolutely possible. So I don't know how to explain the contradiction. Knowing this about this contradiction goes a long way. It was a huge part of why I teach a lot of the stuff I teach. Like, for example, the pedal tones, the lip bends, now this spider dynamic long tones, all of that is now, by the way, this this contradiction is part of the reason why I tell people that great trumpet playing is mental. This contradiction is why I started telling people that it was mental. Because what are you supposed to do with that? What are you supposed to do? The same is true, by the way, for all the other sources of resistance. If you want to play low, you have to have a low tongue position. You don't have to, but that's part of it. One of the things you can do is have a low tongue position. And maybe this is part of what it's all about, right? Is that when you start combining other sources of resistance besides just the aperture. But yeah, this is this all of this stuff is very fascinating. I like to look at the X-rays and the scans that they do to see what's happening inside of people's mouths and stuff like that. None of it applies to how you play because you don't have a scan of your own mouth. You don't have a way to measure your aperture. You don't have a way to measure how high your tongue is or how low it is. We don't have access to those tools, those measurements while we play. What do we have access to while we play? We have access to what does it sound like? That's what we've got. What does it sound like? That's the only tool we have to tell us if we're doing it right or not. What does it sound like? If it sounds right, then you're doing it right. All right. Yes, it does involve the aperture. Yes, it does involve the teeth position. Yes, it does involve your tongue position in your mouth. Yes, it does involve the throat. Yes, it does involve what you do with your air and your posture and all that stuff. Yes, it does involve all of that stuff. But you don't know how it involves all of that. Having scans and x rays of somebody else's trumpet playing doesn't help you. All it helps is give us more theoretical information to stimulate our minds. Seppo says, I just got a recommendation on UP Sound gadget made by Stonevy. How are your thoughts on these devices? Let me look and see if I can come up with that to see. I have not heard of it. Let's take a look. So, is this one of those things that reduces pressure? Oh, no, it's a resistance. Not interested. I'm sorry. I'm not interested. Here's the thing. These kinds of devices are most used by people who, yes, see, the first thing they have on their list says practicing or warming up in situations where using the instrument is impractical. I don't do that. I would rather just not play than to use a device like that. You know, the whole world, The whole world is a bunch of proverbial, I'm going to have to say proverbial because I don't mean to downplay because, my wife is from Africa and she tells me about countries in Africa where they still have landmines. And I don't mean to downplay the whole landmine thing. So I say proverbial, right? Um, the whole world is full of proverbial landmines where everybody is trying to make money off of you. The whole world is like that. And at one point, you just got to say, enough is enough. Jeffrey puts his peace sign up. Yeah, the whole world, they're all out there trying to get you. This is when we read the Bible and it says we are in the world but not of the world. This to me personally is part of what it means. We are in the world, so yes, the landmines are in the field we're walking in. But we're not of this world. We don't have to have landmines in our field. I hope that makes sense what I'm saying. And no, I wouldn't pay for that. I wouldn't. I can't think of a situation where I would want my students to have one of those. Now, don't get me wrong. There are people who have more money than I do, right? There are a lot of people that have a lot more money than I do. And if those people go out and buy these things because it's interesting, I don't have a problem with that. I'm not saying thou shalt not buy these things. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. But me, this past year was a rough year financially, and I expect future years to be almost equally as rough because with the whole dialysis thing, my in my insurance, the out of pocket, I reach out of pocket like in 2 months. So each year, I need to have that many thousands of dollars extra to have the same quality of life I had before I got sick, before I started dialysis. And it matters if I get suckered into something like that or not. It matters, you know? It's that's not just I saw that it's 125 bucks. I don't have you know, I know it sounds ridiculous, right? I s- I I had enough in medical bills in the first 2 months of this. Thank God for insurance. But in the first 2 months of this year, I had enough medical bills to buy two of the houses I'm living in now. So you might say, well, it's just $125. What's that compared to two houses like what you live in now? No, that's not how it works. Right? I gotta put food on the table, pay my bills, and all that stuff. And I'm not even gonna try a gadget like that. It's very similar to how I feel about these guys selling their courses on Facebook and YouTube and stuff like that. It's very similar. Why would you spend $6,000? I know I said I'm repeating myself from last week, but why would you spend $6,000 on something that should be free? And I'm not talking about, see, they're not selling you lessons. You don't even get to take lessons with the guy that had the idea. What they're selling you is information. Anyway, so yeah, that's all in the same category. Gary says, I see some performers lean back for high notes. I think it might be to tighten the diaphragm, but not sure. Is that what they are doing? I can't speak for anybody else, but I'll tell you what, uh, if you see me on a lead gig where I'm playing in a big band, I'm going to adjust my chair so you see it. Don't ignore the big fat belly. It's not as fat as it used to be, but it's still pretty bad. Um, I'm going to show you how I sit in a big band gig. I make my see, the reason I do what I'm about to show you is because I have an overbite. So if I play what's normal for me, the sound is going to go into the trombone's back. So I make my back straight like this. My back is straight. I lean back and I play like this. Okay. Now that's so I can get my sound up over the trombones without having to mess with my embouchure. My back is still straight, but I'm leaning my shoulders on the back of the chair. Now, when I'm standing up, almost always I'm playing into a microphone. So I wouldn't contort myself like that. But I can't speak for other people. I hope that makes sense. All right. EDU says, I've never heard of Maurice Andre practicing with a UP sound. Neither Clifford Brown. Don't get me wrong, there are some things that are worthwhile. I think, for example, now, maybe worthwhile is the wrong phrase for it. I do think that the Pete is appropriate for some students. I don't use it myself, but I have one um, as a demonstration. I wouldn't use it myself. Even with the endurance issues that I told you that I'm working through right now, even with those endurance issues, I would not use the peat myself. I'm sorry. I have one. It's actually my second one because someone horked my first one. I had a nice silver one to start with, and then someone didn't bring it back. I lent it, and it didn't come back. The story of my life, right? When I quit teaching in the schools, I remember that very last year, I took inventory of how much stuff of mine the students had and didn't give back. And um, it was literally hundreds of dollars worth of stuff. And I thought, that's one of the reasons why I said to myself, this is it. It's over. I'm not teaching anymore. Right? And it's still going on. The only thing that's changed is I'm not as eager to lend my stuff out. All right. Seppo says some people like GR and others. Do you think there are quality mouthpieces and normal mouthpieces? Yes, I do. What I don't believe is that it's as easy to tell which are which. But I do believe that there are some mouthpieces that are um, of a higher quality. Now, remember what I said at the beginning of this um, Q and A? Internal dimensions are more important than external dimensions. Okay? So here's the thing though. When it comes to stuff like the throat and the backbone, the internal dimensions are quite complex. So you can have a badly made mouthpiece that, I had a mouthpiece one time that was so very bad that the air wouldn't go through it. It was one of those mouthpiece places that you can order like 20. They put it on your credit card and then you send back the ones you don't want. One of those mouthpieces was so bad it felt like there was no hole through the center. And I kept looking. How is this possible? I compared it to other mouthpieces. They look the same. So somehow, either the combination with my trumpet or just those combinations of factors used in that mouthpiece didn't work for me. And it was so extremely bad that there was no sound coming out of my trumpet at all. Now, I have not heard anybody else ever say anything like the sort. Now, what I tried to do to see if it was just in my head is I mixed them up. Not physically, I didn't want to ruin them before I sent them back. But, I changed the order without looking, right? Sure enough, the same one again would not play. Nothing. It was as if there was no center hole. That's how extreme the mouthpiece internal dimensions can be. And if it can be that extreme on the bad side, surely it can be just as extreme on the good side. But here's the thing, all of this stuff always depends on your preferences. There's no such thing as a great mouthpiece if that mouthpiece does not work for you. It's all very, very personal. I personally have not played on anything but Bach, uh, Giardinelli, and then Stork, and then what's the one? No, no, that's Giardinelli and Warburton. But I haven't been. I don't like try a bunch of mouthpieces all the time. Gary says the burp buzz aid is great in my opinion. That's one of the ones that I put out of all the so-called gimmicks. Like I said earlier, I don't think they're all gimmicks, but out of all of them, that's what I use the most. I'd use a different one that's made by a friend of mine. It's brass. He calls it the brass buzzer. I actually like the brass buzzer better. Brass buzzer. What did I just say? I like the brass buzzer better, and I'll show you why. Let me grab it real quick. The way I use the buzzer is to go back and forth between playing the trumpet and playing the horn. Well, the brass buzzer makes that one step. If you have something that you have to take off to switch, you're creating too many steps. So let's say, oh, sorry. So I can go one step from one to the other. Then back again. That's why I like the brass one because it's such an easy switch. That's why I like it. Now, I only use that when I'm working on a piece of music. I don't use that in exercises. I know a lot of people will use it like in their routine. In fact, the brass buzzer, Jim Thompson, who had his buzzing book, actually mentions this brass buzzer in the buzzing book. But he uses it in the exercises. I don't do that. Um, Sean says in the Trumpet Pro you added pedal tones. Oh, trumpet player, trumpet chops player. That's not Pro. You added pedal tones. I've had a hard time with them. Any suggestions? I can believe people play pedal C and double pedal C. Biggest problem you're probably having is that mute. It's very difficult to play pedal tones with a mute in. Okay. Hello, Tammy. Tammy says I just purchased a Bach soloist after playing a beginner band con. Any suggestions on why the valves always seem to be poorly positioned? Sometimes no sound comes out at all unless I swivel them. Um, there's a valve guide, and that valve guide, when you oil the valves, should go back into the slot. Okay, that's what's happening there. When you put it back together, that I hope this is not too condescending. What my assumption is that your old instrument didn't have it like that. Okay, so you have to um, align the guide. That's the little knob that comes out the top of the valve. Okay, that's what I thought. I remember. You said that you were just getting started. So yes, the when you oil your valve and then put it back together again, look inside the valve casing. You'll see a ridge, uh, like a slot. The valve guide needs to go into that slot. Okay. I'm not sure what I'm reading here. Shoki auto. Oh, I play it on a Shoki 7B4. Okay. Gary says, yeah, I've used the brass buzzer and it's great how fast you can change between the two. Great. Sean asks, now I'm over time and it is Good Friday, but I'll answer a couple more questions. Can you explain the benefit of the brass buzzer? It has mostly to do with, I'll call it ear training. It has mostly to do with putting your lips on the right note in the right pitch. But when you start moving around on the horn, that's not as easy as it sounds. And a lot of times, the reason why we sound bad is because the lips are not going where they're supposed to be going. So if you have a section of the music that you sound bad on, and you do this what I just did now, back and forth between the music and the buzzing, music buzzing, um, you will learn to put your lips at the right pitch so that it sounds better when you play. That's in a nutshell because I'm out of time. Um, Ian says, "Hello, Eddie. I appreciate your videos and wanted to say thank you for the sheet music. I've used some of the music for a few of my videos." Oh, that's great. I'll have to check out your channel. Yeah. I'm going to open your channel on a different tab. Oh, that's not what I'm doing. Yeah, I'm going to check out your channel when we're finished here. Well, thank you for using my music. All right. Uh, Mr. Lampy says, thanks for your time today. It's my pleasure. Mr. Derek says, sometimes the valve guides can. Oh, yeah, he's responding to the. All right, guys. So, I'm going to let you guys go. Um, have a great Easter weekend. Um, and we'll see you next week, I hope. Maybe not. I have gigs next week. Um, God bless you. We'll see you next time we do this. Okay? All right. Have a great week. Bye.